Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, which I'm excited to say we're now airing 5 days a week. Once a week, you can still hear an interview with a different consciousness changemaker that is out there working tirelessly to help catalyze change and expand awareness on Spaceship Earth. But now, in addition to the weekly interview, on the other 4 weekdays, you can tune in to myself and my co-host Dalien taking questions from the audience, covering a bit of positive news, giving interpretations of a favorite quote to ponder, and you can hear us ranting about whatever other positive ponderings come to mind on that day. And as you guys might imagine, producing this podcast is definitely a labor of love for me and Dalien. But make no mistake, it takes a lot of hard work to put it together for you guys, especially now that we're doing it 5 days a week. So if you enjoy the fruits of our labor, please go over, give us a good rating and a review on iTunes. Subscribe for free while you're at it, of course, if you haven't done that already. iTunes truly is the holy grail when it comes to podcasting, and good ratings and reviews are what help our iTunes ranking so that we can gain more exposure in the massive sea of other podcasts that are out there. Even if you have terrible ADD and don't want to take the time to write out a review, trust me, I get it. I'm a bit of a spaz too, but please take at least, the 9.2 seconds it takes to give the show an honest star rating, which only takes one little click. I assure you it will be very much appreciated by us, and that the good karma gods will rain blessings down upon thee for doing so. All right, all you positive heads, welcome to the show today. Hello, Mr. Dalien. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well. Extremely well.
Extremely well.
Yes.
Wow, you're awfully excited for a Monday.
Monday?
It must be because the new Star Wars trailer came out and you've been watching it on repeat about
It's one of the
times.
things that's got me excited, yes.
You do a Yoda voice, don't you?
Sometimes.
Will you please honor us with the Yoda voice?
I will.
I promise I won't even make fun of it.
The Yoda voice?
Yeah.
That's not a Yoda voice I do. I thought it was Yoda talking. I'm looking at him right now.
Oh, yeah, you are looking at a stuffed version of Yoda.
I'm responsible for about 20 million of the 50 million views the new trailer has.
Yeah. Well, you are a Star Wars nerd, as are probably 90% of the listeners, so I guess I'm outnumbered. No, I actually am a big fan too, so I'm looking forward to it. All right, what's going on today? Well, I am excited to say that the podcast is actually been put into the What's Hot category What's Hot segment in 3 different categories on iTunes. So I was really excited to see that. We're gaining more and more traction. So thank you guys for continuing to support and telling your friends and family and so forth about it, because we're hot. Dan, you're hot.
Hot.
Oh, okay. So what are we going to dig into today? Let's see. Over the weekend, a couple interesting stories came across my feed. Somewhere along the interwebs, I saw these stories, or they, someone posted them. That's a friend or something. But first, it was have you seen this one, Dan? The girl who is reading with her third eye. So they've completely blindfolded her, and she's reading. She's from Dallas, Texas, and they actually blindfolded her. They had reporters there who tested the blindfolds. They had multiple people test the blindfolds. Then they give her random things from the audience. They go and grab like a newspaper, a business card, and she reads everything that she gives them word for word. Have you seen this?
No.
Really cool. Really a trip. I mean, I've been seeing so many things like this where, she says, and she's young, she's like 12 or something like that. And she said that she was, she actually did some sort of classes or something where it essentially via meditation, via, making the effort to awaken her third eye, she was able to do so, the Anya chakra, as they call it. So, really, really fascinating to see that. Then I saw a guy with who actually uses chi energy somewhere in China. And this was like actually a documentary, kind of documentary style from the 80s. And it's this guy where he uses this, I guess he's does some particular form of meditation that is all about raising the chi energy in the body. And he would actually go and, work on people. And when he would touch them, when he would intend to actually use the chi energy, it would shock the people. And they brought, skeptics with them and everything who were shocked. And then even at one point they start testing how he's able to do this, and he actually holds a light bulb and causes it to glow. Really cool. And the coolest thing that the guy did was, and you can find this video on YouTube if you search Chinese guy uses chi, and that's CHI. One of the coolest things he does, he takes a piece of paper, balls it up, and just puts chi energy, tries to summon the chi energy, and it burst into flames. So it was quite a trip, because the people who originally did the documentary, they met him. He kind of demonstrated some of his work. Then they filmed it and showed it to someone. He got really upset about that, wouldn't talk to them for years and years and years, because I guess it's something that they typically keep. Part of the practice is not showing off with it. And there was some issues around that, but it was really fascinating. And I'm sure there's people out there that will be skeptical. I mean, we've all seen, I'm sure many of you guys have probably seen, what is it, Stan Lee, the Marvel comic guy. He did that book. Not the book. The TV show Superhuman. So it's just more of that sort of thing just seems to be popping up all the time, where these people are doing things that are once again proving beyond what we consider to be possible. I mean, it just seems more and more these days it's getting stretched with what is and isn't possible with, our physicality and beyond.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love seeing these days? I see more and more references to the third eye out there. And of course, you told this story, which I'd heard something similar. I think that there's another child that's reported having gone to basically being initiated in meditation and practices like this that facilitate opening of their third eye.
Yeah.
It's also, I think it was also a young, a girl of maybe 12 years old. Mm-hmm. But I love seeing more references to the third eye out there. It seems like more and more people have heard of the third eye, right? Mm-hmm. And more people now know the connection between the third eye and the pineal gland, because essentially that's my understanding of what the third eye actually is.
Right.
And physiologically, it was actually the pineal gland, because in some species of reptiles, the third eye is literally an eye with cornea, iris, and retina.
Even ours, the pineal gland has the lens and everything. It's literally got cones and lens and everything like a regular mm-hmm. eye, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I have a story as well on another thing that seems to be cropping up more and more out there. This is you could say this is almost a trendy thing now. Excuse me, but ayahuasca as medicine, okay?
Oh, yeah.
The Amazonian vine, famous for its psychedelic properties.
Right, which we featured a few times with.
Yes, exactly. We've discussed it before. This is a follow-up on a study that was done in 2012 at Sant Pau Institute in Barcelona, Spain. Uh-huh. The study was done in 2012, and they followed up with the subjects this year, so 3 years later, right? And these were people who took ayahuasca regularly for a period of, the last 3 years or so, approximately once every other week, okay? So this was a group of, I think, 25 or so people who took ayahuasca regularly throughout this period. And, of course, they had a control group of people who didn't take anything. The people who took ayahuasca were screened for other substances that might have sort of disqualified them, right? So these were not habitual users of really hardly anything. Even cannabis was very sort of moderate use.
Right.
So what they found is that the people who consistently took ayahuasca demonstrated changes in their physiology, changes in their brain.
Wow.
An area of their brain called the posterior cingulate cortex.
Okay. Sounds important.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty important structure of the brain. It's speculated to be part of a special brain network involved in high-level constructs such as the ego or self, okay?
Oh, wow.
And what happens is regular ayahuasca users demonstrate a thinning of this region of this is a region of the cortex, which is the outer sort of shell of the brain.
Right.
It's like a layer of cells that surrounds the whole, and it's typically associated with our higher mental faculties.
Right.
So for these people, the area basically related to their interpersonal relationships was thinned somehow.
Wow.
Which, of course, to the researchers suggests sort of a higher interpersonal, interaction with everyone else, their fellow humans, themselves, and they had a more transcendent view of themselves. So,
wow.
The researchers were correlating those two things pretty directly. And of course, these people were reporting just an overall, heightened state of well-being and, much more profound inner peace contrasted to the control group.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely been my experience having, done ayahuasca myself, taken the medicine, and been around quite a few people who have done it regularly, some of which have done it extensively over years and years and years. Like, for example, Pablo Miller, who we had on the show previously, 25 years of ayahuasca use. And there's certain people when you can just tell. I have a dear friend Shane who always talks about, I can always instantly tell if they've done Aya or not, and it's just like a certain vibe that seems to be there, and it's a very good vibe. There's like a certain calm or peace that seems to be there. And I think that's really interesting that you mentioned, it talks about, it deals with the area of the brain that deals with ego self, and because that's really what ayahuasca can do is, dissolve the ego in a way that, takes down all these barriers, which can be, of course, very frightening. That's why you hear these frightening, kind of accounts from some people, because when you're so vested in the ego self, and then all of a sudden you're on this, you take this medicine that actually helps to dissolve ego. It's like you're dying. Your sense of self, is gone. Whereas I've also seen people who have just very little ego take ayahuasca and have just the most pleasant, easy journey ever, and it's just blissed out the whole time. So it's interesting because it can really go either way. And I always think, I see some of these people, you see some characters I can think of on a reality show that someone was watching, and I would happen to be there just watching it for a few minutes. It was, there's this person, there's a show called Love and Hip Hop Hollywood, and there's this girl called, I think her name was Nikki, on the show. And I'm like watching this show for a few minutes. Yes, I can't believe I'm admitting this on TV, but on the podcast. But this person's ego was just the most aggressive ego I've ever seen. And I instantly thought to myself, wow, this person needs ayahuasca. Like, they need to have that experience. And of course, no one needs to do anything. Everyone's on their own path. She's on her own path. All the best to her. But it's just, it's one of those things where, it can be such a pleasant journey if there's little ego. And I imagine someone like herself would have a very difficult journey.
It doesn't surprise me that was the case, Brandon, because reality television seems to be very much about that.
Of course.
And of course, I also see it as just sort of the way things need to be. If you're trying to get into one of these reality shows, then you're presumably an average person, right? Who is, of course, not a celebrity, but who is essentially aspiring to become one.
Yeah.
And in that instance, then you're competing with all these, hundreds, by now, thousands of people.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it becomes very much a competition of personalities, which is to say a competition of egos.
Right. So, well, and in their view of the world, like this, people like herself, their idea of completion of success is this very, ego. Everything's about what your look and, your clothes and your, just a lot of plastic surgery and all these superficial things that really it's, and like I said, really no judgment with it. Someone who's at that point in their own evolution, on their own path, they're right where they need to be. There's no mistakes. Mm-hmm. But I often think of it though, Dan, with what's happening on this planet. This crosses my mind a lot, because what's happening on this planet is there's a spiritual revolution happening. There's a speeding up of frequency and vibration. And I think oftentimes when I see someone like that, this, just so embedded in their ego self. And all I can think to myself is, wow, I bet you there is some hard lessons ahead, because the only way for a person to ultimately, go to the next level essentially is, transcending ego, or at least having it in its correct place.
Right.
And I I don't know. So it's just something that I'm almost kind of fascinated when I see someone that's that enveloped and invested in their ego self, and I think the more you become really aware of what's going on, the more humble and humility you have to inject into your life. And I think, the universe will humble you if you've not been humbled.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, life just has a way of doing that because as you implied, of course, part of this overall global process of waking up entails transcending the old ego idea that we had about ourselves. And of course, you and I think that we both share in the fact that we don't view ego as necessarily a bad thing automatically. It's not something to just compulsively fight every inch of the way and just try and get rid of us at any cost, right?
Right.
I think we're supposed to befriend our egos and make them work for us rather than let them run the ship completely,
right?
And not even be aware of that. But for sure, that process entails a letting go of the idea that you had about yourself before. And if you're someone who is extremely identified with, like you said, the things you own, your clothes, your job, etc., all these external things, life will inevitably force you to lose a couple of those,
give you lessons
right?
to show you otherwise.
Exactly.
Get you to go delve further.
Exactly. You'll never be able to hold on to, your job for 30, 40 years. Eventually, you will either retire, you will lose it at some point.
Or someone like, the person that I just used as an example, not to pick on her, but, so vested in appearance. And, it's like, okay, well, that is not going to last very long. So you better work on getting beautiful on the inside quickly because
I'm always so heartened to see, for example, there will be like some really incredibly beautiful Hollywood actresses who there's a couple I'm thinking of, maybe I could mention names, but some of these are considered extremely desirable women, beautiful by almost anyone's standards. But one of these actresses in particular is also a formidable actress, and she doesn't really hesitate to trade her beautiful looks for, prosthetics that make her look ugly, or she'll completely shave her head off. I'm talking about Charlize Theron in case you didn't put it together. Yeah. But no, she's great because she's sort of, for as long as I can remember, she said, "Oh yeah, thanks for finding me pretty. I know my looks will only go so far.
Absolutely.
In my life, what I want to be as an actress, and my looks will only get me so far. They will fade with age, etc., etc." Right. So she's, I guess, all about being real, and that's why she's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, really really interesting to consider all, this ego stuff. We could have conversations for days, but just to throw one other thing out there, because I've referenced this book a few times. It's one of my favorites, Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey, and one of your favorites. And I love how that book talks about the journey into physicality that the soul took. And we, originally separated ourselves from source, the way it puts it. And we would play in these kind of physical realms and then back into, merge back into oneness and then come out again. And, over time we would separate for longer and longer periods of times. And we got more and more proficient at creating the constructs, right? And then we use this ego self as just a way to guide us in this physical realm. And over time, it kind of just took over. The soul was really supposed to guide and give, lead the ego, and the ego is meant to deal with the things that would arise in the physical realm, being human and so forth. But over time, the ego self got more and more, full of itself, so to speak. And what do you know, spirit? You don't really, know anything about this realm. Move over. I'm taking control, kind of thing. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And I've referenced that before, just because I do find it very fascinating. And and now we're at a time where the spirit, the soul, seems to be moving back into the forefront with more and more people. Yet there's this great divide between, people that are still locked so heavily into this ego mentality. And, it's just, like I said, it's just kind of fascinating to look at. And I just wonder what will happen to those people, because I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they will be, the ego will be broken. It has to be broken. It's the only way for them to move forward. And I don't think that will always be pretty.
Oh, absolutely not. I know that we can't really get into this, but what you just said made me think of another thing that, of course, is an expansive, fascinating subject that I will go ahead and mention here, possibly as an idea for, maybe tomorrow's discussion or a future episode, but the survival of consciousness after death is so inextricably related to what you're talking about. Essentially, what I got from the story, which I'd read before, of the origin of the ego is that the ego is just afraid of dying, ultimately.
Right.
And of course, what is one of our predominant experiences in life as physical beings on this planet is death.
Right.
Yet is sort of the elephant, in the room. We're all terribly afraid of death. And yet it's a part of all of our lives. We all sort of intuitively understand this, and yet we resist and fight.
Right.
Of course, we could talk about everything to do with life after death for a whole nother hour, day,
yes,
week.
We'll definitely do that on another show. And now to share our positive pondering breakdown of the day, I have here with me the lovely Ana Bilan, my partner, confidant, and everything in between for the first time on the show. Hello, Ana. Welcome.
Hi, Brandon. Thanks for that intro.
Well, it's the least I can do. You are somewhat special in my life. Okay, you're really special in my life. So
yeah, that's better.
I had to change that, or else I was going to be sleeping on the couch tonight. So Ana writes for the Positive Head blog. She does breakdowns regularly. And as you guys know, we've been bringing our writers on for the last few days as we continue to experiment with these daily podcasts. I thought it was a very nice thing to have them actually come on and read their writing, live and direct to you guys. So without further ado, I will let Ana take it away.
Thanks, Brandon. Okay, so for today's breakdown, I came across a Chinese proverb, and it goes like this. It is easy to be a sage in the peace of the mountains, more difficult in the city, while the deepest of saints can live unaffected in the palace. And I came across this proverb while reading Aaron Fisher's The Way of Tea, and really liked the simple teaching it expressed. I could instantly relate my personal spiritual journey to the progression described in this quote. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend about what kind of environment we choose to spend our time in based on what makes us feel most at peace, and we determined that peace does indeed come from within, and that the environment you are in should not affect your inner state. Of course, this is a state of being that requires practice, and plenty of time spent in the peace of the mountains, so to say, in order to learn how to harness that inner stillness and transfer it to other environments. While reading this quote, if you can determine at which stage of your journey you are in, it will help you recognize what it is that you need most to prosper. Are you in the mountain stage right now? Meaning that you are enjoying your personal journey, finding parts of yourself that have been deeply buried, and really dedicating your energy inward? This is a great stage to be in, because prior to leaving the mountains, you must gather your strength and attain the knowledge that will be useful once you transition to a more dynamic place. At this stage, you might be getting easily overwhelmed with other people's expectations and energies, and might feel like you need to retreat into yourself for a while. Perhaps you have been giving a lot of yourself to others without feeling like your actions have been reciprocated. Or perhaps you feel as if your current surroundings are not conducive to your well-being. Whatever the case, realizing what it is that you need is the first step towards actually getting it. You can interpret this part of the quote in whichever way serves you best. Perhaps you truly do need seclusion and nature right now, and a camping trip is just what the doctor ordered. I sure have felt this way many times before myself. Or perhaps all it means to you is that you need to allot yourself more alone time at home, or find a quieter and more peaceful work environment. Once you feel as if all the growth you could have had in this stage has been achieved and the lessons have been learned, it is time to move on, no matter how comfortable and familiar this place has become. You can always return to this place later, after you experience a more challenging situation and grow from that as well. Which leads into the next stage, the city. The city is a more turbulent place with a lot more challenges, but having come from the mountains, you know enough at this point in your development to hold your own ground and make the right decisions for your best outcome. When you make mistakes in the city, you can forgive yourself and others quicker, move on faster, and see the experience as a learning lesson instead of dwelling on it. Other people's energies aren't as influential on you anymore, and you are even beginning to help others see the way as well. However, you still experience hardship, but at this point, you embrace it because you know that once you overcome it, you will be stronger. Due to its intrinsic dynamic nature, the city is a highly transitionary phase in your development. It seems like almost every day you are facing a new challenge, and some of them are overcoming easier than others. You take note on the more difficult experiences and file them away so that you can look at them all together from a larger perspective when the time is right. You are meeting a lot of new people in the city, and your experience pool is growing. You are learning how to navigate the distractions and annoyances without letting them affect your personal center. However, at this stage, you might still find yourself feeling as if there are places you no longer want to go to or be a part of because you no longer resonate with them. You haven't quite reached the level of self-knowing that comes from feeling completely secure in any situation, no matter how unfitting to yourself it might seem. You might even aggressively refuse certain situations. Let's look at a person who is on a spiritual journey as an example. They have found what works for them, such as practicing yoga and meditation, but at the same time, they would feel uncomfortable going to a bar or somewhere else where the main focus of activity is not on enlightenment or development. They might even look down on people who choose to partake in, quote, unenlightening activities. They might reject such activities because those activities represent parts of themselves that they are either wanting to move past or insecurities that they have yet to address. Moving on from the city stage takes time and effort, but afterwards, one can enter the palace and be unaffected. So how does one reach the palace? It's a place of extravagance, temptation, and distraction, but one in which nonetheless you can remain humble and peaceful. I would say that in order to do that, one must become completely comfortable in his or her own skin. The saint's simple robes do not worry her in a palace filled with people wearing luxurious gowns. The saint knows that this environment is only as comfortable as she herself makes it. She will be seen and regarded by the nobility in the manner which she represents herself. When she speaks, people listen because she knows that what she has to say is authentic, and not just to hear her own voice. Her ego has transcended to a sense of self-worth. She sees everyone as equal. She knows that she is just as worthy of being in the palace as the king, and she also knows that the king can be just as humble as the saint. She does not see herself as any more enlightened, better, or smarter than anyone around her. The palace does not tempt the saint, does not make her want anything more than what she already has within herself. At any moment, she can return to either the city or the mountain and be just as happy. There is no attachment to anything. Well, of course unless you are an ascended master, I don't believe that any of those experiences are static. We all go through periods in our lives where our needs and desires fluctuate, so it is important to remember to honor yourself in whatever place you are in and reflect upon why you transitioned there. There are times when I feel that my personal reservoirs are overflowing and I can expand my energy to encapsulate myself completely and thus keep my composure and inner stillness in even the most distracting environments. But at other times, I crave the stillness that solitude brings. I believe that the best way to reach a state of being in which your inner knowing, happiness, and satisfaction are upheld is by first and foremost practicing balance. Balance between work and play, between solitude and socializing, and between darkness and light. Realize that you are perfect in your imperfections, because each of those mistakes, hurts, feelings of inadequacy, and so forth, are all stepping stones for you to overcome. And perhaps realizing most importantly is that it is okay to waver between these different stages and not feel like you are regressing at any point, because each time you truly are getting closer to the palace.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing. I really resonate strongly with the concept of, being perfectly imperfect, as you touched on. And I often say to myself and others, it's really this journey in life is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's part of the process. So it's so easy to get down on ourselves when we why am I negative today, or feel like I've taken a step backwards, I'm back on the mountain, or
right. And I wouldn't say back on the mountain, because that kind of carries more of a
it's a negative thing.
Failed. Yeah.
Right.
I would say it's more of a fluid state that we can all transition into, and really kind of get to that level where we're not feeling like we're regressing. And even those 2 steps back that you mentioned, I think, should be honored as a place where we're meant to be at that particular moment.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's in listening to your inner guide. So you're honoring what it feels like. Hey, I need time alone. I need time to reflect. Okay, I'm ready to go into the world and go into the city. And, I think too often people are doing one thing or the other way too often, and not necessarily following, those natural cycles, as you kind of referred to.
Yes. And, even as something that I personally experienced today, after writing this blog, I was in a really good mood and a really good place. And then something happened that just kind of triggered, some feelings of hurt in me. And I was really upset because, having just reflected on all of these different stages, in writing the blog, I was kind of feeling like, oh, all I want to do right now is, go to my mountain place and kind of really do some inner work, and be in solitude. And I told you that, Brandon, and you said, okay, well, let's go to Big Sur. And I said, no, it's more of a metaphorical mountain.
Right. True.
So
I'm always trying to problem solve. Uh-oh, she's upset, which is very rare. And so it was funny, how it all kind of, came about. But, that's the great thing about doing these daily podcasts. It's such a rarity. You're such a solid individual. And I always, when I'm the bragging boyfriend, this person, when I describe you to people, is like, there's so little baggage and you're always in such a good mood and upbeat and just so clear and no drama, hardly ever. And of course, the first day I invite you to come on the show and read your wonderful, breakdown that you just read for us. Something comes up and there's all these emotions. And the thing that I really respect and I think is a great piece of wisdom to share with people out there is the way that, instead of trying to repress these things down when they came up, you're working through them. And it's so easy, especially as your, boyfriend or as a parent or as a friend, for us to always say to people, no, it's okay. And try and pacify them and get people to, stop crying or stop being upset. And it's so easy to do, but I think it's really, really important to allow people to actually process the emotions and feelings. And I'm trying to be better about that. Instead of fixing it instantly and trying to make it go away, allow the person to, work through it. And I think I can think back to a earlier podcast with Pablo Miller, where we talked quite a bit about this. When you're feeling some emotions coming up, something that you need to work through. And in this case with you, that's really what it was. It was something that's kind of there, that's been under the surface for a long period of time. And it just kind of, the right set of circumstances caused it to bubble up, all of a sudden. And when that happens, and, so many people in society repress it, push it down. And that is, I think, the exact opposite of what we should be doing, and Pablo talked about going within. When that's happening, even if you're driving down the road, pull over to the side of the road, put some calm music on, cover your eyes, and go there. Dive deep into the emotions.
Even aside from that, which is a very, involved way of processing something, and it might take you out of your current moment. A lot of people might not have the luxury of, really having a safe space that they can express themselves in. But touching on the point of what you said earlier about having baggage, and what a lot of people end up doing is they end up repressing those feelings and, not having the ability to express them, and that turns into baggage.
Right.
But the the upside of having baggage is that it's detached from you. It's something, imagine suitcases. You can just leave them somewhere.
Right.
You don't have to keep carrying them around. Just ship them off and that's it. You're done.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so nice to have you here with me doing this, and everyone gets to hear how peaceful my girlfriend's voice is and how you can see why we go so well together, because she can calm me down from my spazziness. She's the yin to my yang, I guess. Yeah.
I'm not always successful.
No, definitely not. Thank you, Anna. Let's see here. I did receive a question from Maria Young, and the question that she sent in was, how do you commit to a practice of staying positive instead of falling into the cracks of negativity? And
great question.
Yeah, great question. Simple question, but profound. I mean, it's what this whole show is about, right? So it's general in a sense, but really the simplest answer is it's a daily conscious effort. It really is. Every day you just have to check yourself, and like we talked about a little bit ago, when I was speaking with Anna, it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You are going to slip into negativity at times. It's inevitable. And the difference is when you're having these emotions, instead of acting like they are you can start viewing them as happening to you. And that creates separation, like we've talked about with, teachers like Eckhart Tolle talk about, and, the observer and the ego self, a great book. Speaking of ego, this is the self that's always acting out. And that's not really the higher self. The soul self is the observer behind it. So when you're having those negative feelings, they're coming from a negative perspective. And if you can observe yourself having those thoughts, then you start to create separation from them. It's like instantly there's like a gap there, and you're no longer feeling like it's, this is it. I just feel this way. I'm negative and there's nothing I can do about it. You can do little things like we've talked about before, where you just don't even reach for a positive thought necessarily, because maybe that's too far away. You can, reach for a neutral thought. You just want to, make those steps. Becoming aware, I think, is really the key. And because so many times people get just enveloped in negativity, and they're not even aware of what's happening. They're just lost in it. And when you can bring some awareness to it, and you can see that it's happening, and then realize that, this too shall pass, I think that's a very, very powerful concept, to take into your consciousness, and to always have there. Well, this is happening. It's like a cloud going across the sky. It's going to pass. And if I can reach for thoughts that feel good, if I can, like we've talked about before, what's another thought that can feel good? It's always come from a thought. It's always come from a perspective. It's always, anytime you're slipping into the cracks of negativity, it's a mechanism that's happening to you because of what you've chosen to thought previously, and if you can start consciously choosing different thoughts, you can always find something to reach for that feels better. And that's really the key to it, is reaching for something that feels better, realizing that this is almost like a scientific process, and reach for those better thoughts, and be okay with slipping some.
Yeah. What he said, but double, see?
Yeah, what he said, but double, see?
Yeah. No, you were absolutely, of course, very right about what you said. And there's nothing that I could dispute out of anything you said. I would maybe add a couple things. For sure, one thing that has worked out for me recently is becoming aware of the quality of the energy that's present in any moment within my body. And that's one thing that helps me. Of course, it doesn't always help me, but it helps me snap out of it when I'm in the thick of something that's triggering me. If I find, of course, it's so easy to...
Deep breathing is a great tool.
Oh, it's a huge, tremendous, could be the biggest tool we have, actually.
The most underutilized tool ever,
Right, exactly. But the key is to try and remember in the moment. And of course, that's a thing that's much easier said than done. It's so easy to get pulled into a situation that's, rife with intense feelings and things like that. But if you can ever break that identification, like you were saying, breaking that automatic compulsive identification with your feelings and your thoughts, that's how you begin to loosen that structure up. And then hopefully what will happen is, say tomorrow you wake up and everything's going well until you're in traffic and someone cuts you off or whatever.
Yeah.
if you find yourself slipping down that road, if you can catch yourself and if something within you happens to remember, then that can shift everything for you. And that's the beginning of how you can undo that whole automatic compulsive identification.
Yeah.
You remember that you want to feel good at all times.
Yep.
And then hopefully, with time, with a few, of course, a few hundred maybe repetitions of the whole cycle, you'll begin to remember. You'll go, oh, I'm getting pulled into the drama again. I'm going where I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And you'll remember to, like you said, take that deep breath. Of course, I want to feel good. I want to just let this go. The old way of doing things would be to just fall for it, to just automatically go there and buy it all, hook, line, and sinker. But today, different. And today you can break that pattern by taking that deep breath and just letting go.
Yeah, you're someone who's very qualified to talk about this too, because having been your friend and close participant in your life for going on 20 years now, I've watched you work on these things, and you're someone who in the past would get triggered really easily, and now it takes so much more. And I can see if you're having one of those moments, I can see how you literally bring yourself right back out of it. It's like just the improvement has been so dramatic. And it's something that you've had to work really hard at. But I think it's something that, you'll probably agree that the greater one, struggles for their liberation, the greater the sense of liberation that's achieved. And so I love hearing you talk about it, because I know just from personal experiences, I mean, we all can relate to it. We've all been there, but you've really worked hard. And I think that's the difference between someone who just kind of gives up, throws in the towel, and, isn't even trying, versus someone, you only lose when you quit. And so I definitely applaud you for the work that I've got to watch you do, because you've gotten really good at maintaining your energy and your vibration, and really spending very little time in a negative state, comparatively.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Of course, as you know, and as you said before, it is definitely a daily practice.
Yes, for sure. Daily conscious effort. So, well, guys, that is, we're running out of time here. So thank you for joining us for yet another, daily podcast. We have an exciting interview coming up later in the week to share with you. So thank you guys for joining us. And, remember to take a moment to give us a rating on iTunes. It's very much appreciated. And of course, helping to spread the positivity by telling your friends, family about the podcast is also very much appreciated. Our effort is to get this out as far and wide as possible, and we appreciate you all taking the time to tune in. Dan, do we have a song that we want to leave people off with today?
I believe we do.
Yeah, this is a new thing that we just started, and sharing music is always a beautiful thing. So what do you got queued up to leave the listeners with today?
This is one of my very favorite new artists, and I have to thank your podcast interviewee, Jonah Haas, for bringing him up. Emancipator.
Oh, he did bring him up. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I was not even aware of this guy until Jonah mentioned him.
In our interview.
I couldn't help but, run to Spotify afterwards, find everything I could and devour it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, what is the song?
This is the title track from his very latest new album, 7 Seas, featuring Madeline Grant.
Awesome. Well, we will leave you guys with a little taste of Emancipator today. Remember, before you go, when you go, wherever you go, as long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Be well, everyone.